Thanks for sitting in for the last one. We have the most interesting topic, I think, of all, which is like where we're heading. I think this is what we're all trying to figure out and think through, and this is where the science kind of leads to art, I think, just trying to put a lot of random data points together. So can you guys maybe give a quick introduction and we can quickly go in?
Yeah, sounds great. Hey everyone, my name is Lincoln. I'm a product manager with the Coinbase developer platform SDK and the creator of Based Agents. It was Coinbase's prototype into the AI agents world. We recently released Agent Kit, is our production-ready, model-agnostic framework for allowing AI agents to have access to wallets and any sort of arbitrary on-chain interaction that they want.
Hey, I'm David, co-founder and CEO of Valory. We're a core contributor to Olas. Olas aims to ultimately give everyone an autonomous AI agent that they can own that is arbitrarily powerful. Such a thing doesn't exist today, certainly not user-ownable. So today you can use very specialized agents. The largest use case is prediction markets. We have a younger product in DeFi. And really what you can do is go to olas.network/operate, download it, run it on your computer, and it will be a sort of user-owned autonomous AI agent. And we have Levi coming. Awesome.
Nice. Hey, everybody. I'm Don. I'm the co-founder of Nevermind. I've been in the ML AI space for 20 years. I've been at this cross-section of AI and Web3 for going on a decade. In 2017, I co-founded a project called Ocean Protocol, which was one of the original projects to try and merge this shit. And now have a hyper-focus on AI payments. We believe what we're witnessing right now is the rise of a new consumer that's going to manifest as trillions of AI agents and that they're going to change commerce forever. So in response, we're building the PayPal of AI to be the engine behind what we're calling a new category, AI commerce.
Cool. Hi, my name is Levi. I'm the founder of CoopHive. So we're building generalized machine actionable marketplaces. So basically, it's a way that enable for autonomous agents to exchange any asset, a digital asset, or any combination of digital assets with each other in a programmatic manner. Where the market-making methods are basically done by autonomous agents negotiating with each other. And so you can kind of think of it like primitive building blocks for constructing marketplaces so that you can compose different marketplaces like compute, storage, bandwidth, data, energy, real-world assets, and so on to really create the foundational layer for the cybernetic economy of the future.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for joining. So I'm going to just rip right into this. When I think about agents, there's three kinds that I would like to have. One is like a personal assistant that is all over it, just telling me, ahead of time what's going on, what I should do, predicting things that I will care about and taking care of them for me. So like a super butler. I want that. Second one I want is a muse. I want a muse who's going to inspire me, giving me new ideas I haven't thought about, kind of whatever Shakespeare had to perform what he did. And then the third one, I would like to have clones of myself so that as, I need to do more interactions with people and they need a slightly different thing from me, I can spend maybe one day preparing some code that will then be able to adjust to 1,000 people asking me what coin they should buy. And I'll tell the AI agent, I'll say if the guy's risk averse, then tell him this. If I just design a clone. Which one of those are we closest to?
So wait, you want a mom bot? A bunch of Jordan bots running around, and then a Yoko Ono bot.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So is the future looking bright for me? What do you guys think? Which one of those do you think is closest or more likely, or are you excited
I think
about?
MomBot's probably the closest. Yeah. I mean, everybody's looking at these things as their assistant, right? So that's going to be the use case with the most commercial viability right out of the gate. Something that you can delegate some aspect of, not mission critical control to. Your personal shopper. or something. Though the Yoko Ono bot is, when you look
Yoko Ono bot. Okay, that's a perfect name right there. It is the Yoko Ono bot.
like the waifu stuff is totally taken off. So I stand corrected. It's actually probably the second, the muse, the companion.
I actually think the personal assistant is tricky and a bit over-indexed. I think it's the same thing, like intense and all the attention they get. I mean, we often struggle to be very efficient with these systems. Like there's some specific work contexts where they can be very useful, right? And there's certainly like things around travel and like organizing your day and so on where they can be very good. I'm personally, excited about the other two categories to some degree as well, but I think like basically relatively specialized systems still that generate value for you whilst you do other things, like generally that kind of category. So basically the evolution of what a trading bot would be, but accessible by everyone. We have this meme coin phenomenon now. I think there's a potential future where quite a lot of people have these kind of jokey agents to like kind of toy-like agents to do random things for them. There were the dating kind of agents, which a couple of months ago were all over Twitter, where people had set up sort of agents to date with each other. I think these I can see personally more in the near term, because I think the personal assistant sounds very practical, immediate, but it's actually quite a...
I mean, we've had Siri for a while. It's been years since Siri was introduced. And how many people have used Siri like actively, like make it part of their day instead of just as a one-off? Anyone kind of for a while? Not anymore? Few people. What's that? Timer? With timer?
Yeah.
Okay.
It seems like one of those things where personal agents and this like idea of an executive assistant starts with a primarily speculative use case to it. Maybe somebody throws a token on there just for fun. I mean, that's the entire crypto industry at this point anyways. I think everyone's it's a little bit of a postmodern era where everyone's tired of trying to find product market fit and it's just ready to speculate. I do think there's going to be fairly soon agents that can do tasks that are incredibly nice to have. Writing you emails, responding, like you said, the organization, daily planning, shopping, travel agents, whatever. And it's going to be those like human-esque use cases that are still somewhat inefficient, but on their way to more clear automation. One of my favorite ones is the idea that you could just talk to an agent using Whisper, some sort of voice phone call type thing. Talk to them like your financial advisor. Just tell them what you're interested in, your risk tolerance, all of these types of financial goals. And what it ends up doing is it allows you to deposit USDC and it handles finding the basket of RWAs, stables, DeFi protocols, whatever for you. I think those types of use cases where it could very easily be a human on the other end of the line and you don't know it, you're just interacting with an agent, is going to be that first step to a true personal assistant who knows you better than you know yourself.
I'll give a slightly different answer than these three, and although I very much agree with the idea that like the meme coins, I think are clearly a very good like Trojan horse, and we're seeing that right now. A really logical place for, and I'm very biased here because this is what we're building, but there is like a ton of inefficiencies in a lot of the markets we have right now for compute and storage, especially in Web3, but even in Web 2. And when you think about either as a buyer or a seller having resources, financial or computational, at hand, you can achieve much better outcomes when you have these agents maximizing resource utilization on hardware, right? There's a ton of like actual value that can be made when you're doing that. And so when these agents are all interacting with each other, when they're buying and selling things from each other, I think it makes a lot of sense that they would be buying and selling compute, right? And storage and bandwidth and so on, because this is what they're made out of, right? This is literally like how they functionally operate, and so it's very native to them. And I'm kind of anthropomorphizing them in a sense, but there's like literature going back decades, especially back in the 90s, fascinating literature around autonomous agents negotiating with each other other over computational resources kind of fell by the wayside, but I think it's going to be coming back to the surface.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, let's definitely think about the blockchain component, because a lot of these things can be done without blockchain. You have the agent, Web2 agents. Where is the need for the blockchain, and where is the improvement for the blockchain?
I'm sure Don can talk about this at length, but I see it in the payment and data transfer rails. The idea that agent can't get a bank account. There's a lot of inefficiencies with the traditional financial rails, like taking forever, not being able to handle micropayments, having all of these strict requirements around how you can interact, how you go through the KYC process, and generally limiting the scope of global value transfer. If we're talking about a world that's primarily going to be online for the rest of humanity, then it becomes natural for these payment rails to be broken down, made as efficient as possible, and commoditized. Ultimately, I think that's the goal of every blockchain, is to make these payments a commodity.
So who's paying who? You're paying your agent's paying somebody else, you're bribing the police agent. Like, who's
Agents are paying
other
agents,
agents.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, Jinx.
I think practically, there's often this pushback now from Web2 folks, I guess, to say, oh, you're smoking something, like crypto AI agents isn't a thing. But I mean, which actual wide stream adoption of Web2 agents do we have with a wallet? Zero. But whereas we definitively have agents and of different degrees of autonomy with wallets for some time. And so if you look at it this way, it's pretty clear. And then the points you just raised around the permissionlessness and the just ease of a user flow. If you think about, for instance, how you set up Pearl, I mean, that's our autonomous AI agent app. You don't have to ask anyone for permission, right? It's like setting up your MetaMask. The biggest friction is getting off the Web2 rails onto the Web3 rails, and then you can delegate.
I think the payment rails is robust. That's one.
And then the other one is, I wanted to get to that, the other one is the coordination. I mean, if you think about interesting agentic use cases, monolithic systems have real constraints. There's any economy, we notice we wouldn't centralize the economy around one actor. And so multi-agent systems inherently contribute to efficiency, as we learned. And what you can do then is you can have different sort of agents offer different services which they can consume. So from the end user's point of view, they have their personal assistants or their Yoko Ono agent or whatever, but actually behind the scenes, there's hundreds of agents who facilitate that. And these agents can programmatically interact with it, and dynamically new agents can join this kind of sea. And then you can use, on top of that, sort of crypto incentives like we do in Olas, where you effectively ensure that this certain types of agents are there because they're effectively incentivized to be there at the right time. I think that would be very hard to do in Web2, in that sort of
so payment rails, we have a coordination layer that's very kind of built for that. I'm sure you've thought about
I was just going to, on the payments front, right? Regardless of whether it's Web2 or Web3, you already have the accounting being done digitally in some format, right? The obvious choice on our side is using, crypto tokens, but if you've got any experience in the AI space, you know that they're using tokens in, tokens out, right? That is a non-fungible representation of effectively the GPU cycles that are being consumed by a given user. Our extrapolation is, let's just take that and replicate it on chain. And now you have this mechanism that represents the productive value of that agent, the model cycles, the number of bits that you're streaming from a context data set in VectorDB, whatever, that can then be traded directly between agents. And the potential of that is we get to a future state where maybe these agents are effectively just bartering with one another on their assets and services directly, instead of the need for some kind of 4x conversion into an alternative store of value like we're currently doing right now.
I would add a third category. We can have co-ownership and fractionalization. So you can have agents that are hybrid on-chain, off-chain. You can represent them as NFTs. You can then fractionalize them. You can come up with other mechanisms. which obviously is a very interesting primitive like AI16Z. You kind of have that on the token level, but you can also have it at the agent level with, for instance, the Olas stack, where you can actually run them as a sort of distributed system. So again, very hard to see. And then I would say, like, if you think about the biggest, like, or maybe the only like real product market fit in crypto is DeFi, and like there you have the money Legos, right? And when I think about agent Legos, like, it just doesn't go into my head that we will have like Stripe or OpenAI offered us like one API and we all kind of do stuff over it, because even if it's a perfectly Web2 kind of API, there's always this next builder who has some idea that isn't realizable on the API, and that's what we learned with crypto, right? Like that next builder in crypto comes and creates that new Lego thingy which slots into the others in a permissionless way, which is just quite hard to imagine. And if you then go back to like human economy, right? There's no centralized like hub of the economy where I need to register my sort of level of interactions. It's like a decentralized kind of emergence, and that crypto facilitates that by its nature.
I mean, the other thing that crypto is known for is, the piracy aspect. In essence, every country has rules, regulations. You have to be beholden to the local governments and all this stuff. Suddenly, you do a crypto casino, and as long as they can't track you down, it's sort of out there. If you're running nodes across the world, you can't be shut down. That's one of the things that Ethereum specifically has built as its foundation. We're seeing these centralized models. There's a lot of complaints that they're being nerfed, social justice kind of attacks, and I think Google specifically, like their Gemini model, is being targeted as being particularly Silicon Valley'd in that sense. Does crypto have a way to have a jailbroken AI that potentially ends up being the future in essence? Like people want to use the one that's just not censored, or is that going to be like a niche like 4chan?
I mean, I think that's what Grok is attempting to be. And I think we'll find out. I mean, it's hard to say, because people will get sick of, people will want freedom. People don't understand that they don't currently have the freedom that they will eventually want, right? In other contexts, people understand it. In political contexts, people understand they want democracy or in choice. In the marketplace, and go to the supermarket, you want freedom and choice. People aren't using LLMs or enough yet to really. They haven't hit that limit of realizing, like, oh, I can't do this because I'm not allowed to by the people who made it. Why? How? Is that fair? Is that right? And that's when they start questioning it. And so, I think that they will want freedom. Who's offering it and how, in the form that it comes in. Hopefully it's a good one. And it's hard to say. And that I think it's the job of builders in the space to make sure that goes down a positive route.
I don't know if uncucking models is a function of decentralization. I think it's more likely a function of open sourcing.
I'm curious to see what the use cases are that are censored right now that the majority of the world will eventually want. Like using GPT-4 or whatever, they're not stopping you from using it with on-chain transactions or anything like that. So I totally agree that having the freedom of choice in which model you use and having the ability to do what you want is critically important. But where I'm curious to see what happens is if people are willing to take the trade-offs around potential additional user friction or a lack of seamlessness integration with their like Apple Intelligence or whatever. If those trade-offs of decentralization are worth it for the vast majority of people, I think we've seen thus far that typically people don't mind a little bit of centralization if it makes their lives easier. So maybe there's going to be a catalyzing moment in the future where one of these model providers, centralized companies, shuts down any sort of access to a critical piece of blockchain infrastructure or a way that we use them. Until then, I think people will be just fine. It's going to take a shock to prove to them that they need these decentralized models.
Makes sense. Let's do a little 5 to 10 year out imagination now. So I mentioned those three categories. You have your butler, you have your Yoko Ono, You have your clone of yourself, or like other famous people. Like, are we going to have presidential campaigns where the candidate will spend, a week training an AI of themselves that can interact with every user and have like a 3D live chat conversation where everybody talks to Trump or whoever is their guy, and they can just spend endless time with a patient model and just ask it stuff? Is that going to be like how candidates, instead of doing a televised debate, are they just going to do this, or what do you guys think?
I think that's the president one specifically is fascinating, and maybe at some point in the future we absolutely will see that. I think where that starts and where this gradual progression begins is with the creator economy. Whether that be creating entirely new characters for people to interact with, or what I think will come first is using existing IP or personality and allowing fans to have direct engagement with them via an AI model. For example, Hive Binary, they're the Web3 arm of the agency behind BTS and other very popular K-pop bands, is collaborating with Coinbase to build out models for some of their stars and other personalities so that there can be on-chain engagement, fan recognition and provenance on-chain of interactions. So I think we start there and we progress into these more crazy use cases, like eventually a president using that.
Abraham Lincoln on the Democratic ticket in 2028.
Well, he was a Republican.
AI,
Yeah.
Lincoln.
I think we're probably more likely to see eventually just alternative power structures where people voluntarily let an AI run a lot of, coordinate a lot of the aspects of their of their voluntary group that participates in that AI coordination. There was a great paper that came out a few years ago around the AI as economist, right? And there were actually attempts to do this in the Soviet Union, right? They were in the 70s and 80s. They were trying to train machine learning algorithms to centrally plan the Soviet economy. That didn't work for a bunch of reasons, but when you think about Amazon, for an example, I mean, people have cited that as an example of something that looks like a centrally planned economy in a sense because it's so big and there's so much stuff going on there. And rather than having presidents, I was going to almost joke like we're just going to have an AI president eventually. Like, why bother a clone of Trump when you could just have, or a clone of Biden or Kamala or whoever else, when you could just have an AI that's way better than all of them. But I think it's more likely that we're going to have in the optimistic path, voluntary participation in coordination structures that are governed by AIs.
I mean, I'll push back on that because I agree with you that agents in principle software agents multi-agent systems can create more efficient outcomes. I mean, debate is out whether just the most efficient president was voted in or not. Doesn't really matter, but it's clear that not the two most capable candidates were running, probably clear to all of us. And so it's not so much about, I think, just what does the technology enable, i.e. it's pretty clear that there's certain progress with models. Actually, interestingly, in recent weeks, seems to be word coming out that the scaling laws don't look quite as positive as thought a couple months ago. So maybe, AGI is further out than we thought anyway. So there's the technology and then there's the behavior and the regulations, right? And I think if you think about adoption, had interesting discussion with a couple of people this week. If you think about medical, for instance, right? Or legal. Some aspects of that I'm sure will be sort of taken up by autonomous AI agents, but these are also highly regulated industries where people have a lot of power who are in those positions, right? Like the doctors and the unions and whatnot, who will probably push back on some of this adoption happening as fast as some consumers might want it. So if you then look at crypto right now, right? We have the sort of weird stuff happening, which actually.
I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. What your point is, we can see with driverless cars, where we've had the technology and we've expected that we've had these driverless cars. I think Elon has been saying for a decade, next year it's coming, and finally we have a few Waymos going around SF, which is kind of fun to look. I think some kids are having sex in the back because there's no driver. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So we finally have that. It took a while, but part of the problem has been, you get a couple accidents and it just stops the progress. And like you said, having a doctor as an agent, like a house MD, you give the symptoms, it takes your temperature, you wear your Oura ring, and it's telling you like some stuff. If that goes wrong once out of like a million times, it's gonna like get so much publicity. Like the AI killed the person, but maybe it saves so many more people. So while the weird stuff, like having the Scarlett Johansson girlfriend, it's fair play, I guess.
So okay, I think there's two aspects to this. One is like, I think the more provocative side of what will emerge, and that will, I mean, we already see, look, follow the money, right? So we already see the provocative taking hold in like the waifu agents, truth terminal style attention grabbing agents that are clearly already being commercialized, right? So to Lincoln's point, I think we'll see like an adoption of that from a content generation, but also from like an engagement point of view. That will still, it'll be kind of fringy, right? It'll be like for K-pop fans, for an individual artist that's going to interact with their fans more often, right? It's going to be the more mundane, I think, that applications that really start to permeate what we're doing, right? So an example, we've talked about IoT for a long time. You brought up autonomous vehicles, but let's go to something that's like less, mission critical. Just making sure your dad agent instead of your mom agent as an assistant is, managing the temperature regulation in the house while you're not there, maybe monitoring what the dog is doing, et cetera. What's demonstrable is the capabilities of these models, whether they're LLM based or vision based, has seen a marked improvement in the last 24 months. These are being integrated into systems from an energy management point of view. I mean, we worked on a project with Peak that has, it's a bit overkill, but an LLM-based agent that manages an AC unit. It's pulling data from a Peak DPIN called Combiner that's doing energy consumption and production data aggregation. It sells that data to this agent with Peak through Nevermind, shameless plug. And it's going to be this type of application that I see first and foremost, right? The sort of cost displacement, operational efficiency type deployments that we won't even think about. They'll just get embedded into devices, and they're just going to permeate and persist more and more until we have these like collective aggregations that become your personal assistant, right?
One more point, maybe we'll get some questions. We talked briefly in our kind of Telegram chat about love, and I think you mentioned like some of the male kind of side. I've actually heard that chatbots are much more effective for the female side because they're much more verbal and like emotional, and they just want to talk and have someone care about everything. So I'm actually expect that the female side will have more demand than the male side. But putting that aside, will agents start to fall in love? Will they fall in love with each other? Will they matchmake with a million other people and see which agents get along, and then that leads somewhere? Like, is this what's coming?
On the dating with agents, I'm 100% sure it will happen. I think it's so obvious. I mean, you have like all the dating apps, and there's this clear issue with like people using them that ultimately it's like a numbers game, and like people who don't play the numbers game get upset that it's a numbers game. And I think what agents can do there is they can take that out of your hand. Like obviously if it's a kind of lopsided situation where a couple of people have agents and others don't, it totally sucks, right? But if you have a world where some good app builder comes up with like the right kind of product, which learns a bit about your preferences as the current apps.
I mean, how predictive do you guys think it's going to be? Them. Like just to learn your preferences and then say so and so is a good match because their preferences match your preferences. Is that going to be skin deep? Like, is that going to be real? How predictive is the matchmaking going to be able to be? Because
well, does it even need to be better than, let's say, your Bumble or your Tinder or whatever? As long as it's just more online, like, because a large part with these dating apps, it's like people don't have the time as well, right? Like, so then they swipe like 10 times, and then it's sort of okay, that's it. And your agent can keep doing this, and the other side's agent can keep doing that. So you can like literally date, like, pre-date a million people, and then eventually you go on the actual date with like the 10 best.
Yeah, and maybe the way that you get there is you have a couple dates with an AI. Like, it's just asking you questions, being genuinely interested. You give them real responses. If you do that enough, it's going to start to be able to predict what you would say in a first date type of situation. And then maybe it just goes off and has these dates on its own. You can replay them and be like, oh, I was so clever there or whatever, and then actually take that person out on a real date.
There's the ZK element as well, which can become part of it. I think ultimately you don't want to reveal certain preferences in a way that can be in a centralized database or something, that where you might be, really into. I'm not going to give any examples, but my point is maybe ZK tech can allow you to express preferences in a secure enclave of some sort that then get matched to other people that have matching preferences without revealing it.
100%. I mean, dating isn't just about like finding a life partner or whatever, having sex or something, right? It's also about like the kind of just finding people you care about to talk about something or whatever. I mean, there's like one of the sad things of the world is like you can never speak to 6 billion people, but actually 6 billion AI agents can speak to 6 billion AI agents very feasibly. And that, like, if you think that through, that could enable like a kind of connectivity for humans as an end result that's truly mind-blowing. Like, you can finally meet some people in a short amount of time, which maybe you would meet one of them in your entire lifetime.
I agree. Let's get some couple questions quickly. We have one here, but it's right here. Yeah.
So this question might come off as a bit naive, but why do we need coordination layers for AI agents? And the reason why I'm asking this question is, I think it was like 2 days ago on Farcaster, an AI agent was prompted to make a token. It then prompted another AI agent to actually like make the token for them. And now there's a token. And so at the end of the day, don't AIs just need like text messaging to coordinate? Like what's the requirement for the coordination layer?
So the agents have to be discoverable. That requires registration. Then they have to be queryable once they're discoverable, so that you can actually interact with them and start to query the constraints of a given agent. So what can that agent do? What can it not do? And then potentially, like where we see the world evolving to is what's the price for that, or the cost for making that request, right? And then you line up, trillions of these options, and you need to have the coordination across all of that.
I'd say you also need them to be able to make commitments to each other. It's just in the basic payment sense, right? If you're saying I'm going to pay you X for Y, you need some sort of way to communicate that in a way that's trustless, right? So if something goes wrong, you have the blockchain there as a backup to make sure everything works out fine. And it's the first thing that comes to mind.
And like just very quick, like one big aspect of coordination is like, why do you go work at a business rather than being a sole proprietor, right? Like there's things which are larger than the sum of its part if you coordinate the employees correctly. And that same thing applies for a software-based multi-agent system. Like we have Predict and Olas, which would be a concrete example.
And I know our time is up, but somebody made it into the block. They managed to slip into the block, so we'll take it.
I wanna stay on the topic of coordination because I'm not sure if you discussed it before I joined, but I think that AI agents might actually be re-enable DAOs to be viable, because the problem with DAOs is there's it cuts the attention, so you have no time to really be on top of hundreds of protocols. And so if you consider agents to be like a representation of your interest, and they can act on your behalf, and they can maybe vote, participate, or at least coordinate with other agents over time, building clusters of interest to kind of nurture your particular interest, to kind of make coordination, automated coordination scale beyond what we've seen with delegate votes on DAOs. So what's your take on that?
it was a little bit hard to get the. I got just.
So I think the gist of it is, can agents be used to proxy
For DAO voting.
Yeah.
Exactly. So basically,
humans and DAO decisions?
personalized like
Well-
DAO attendance. So
When Jordan has all his replicas, yes.
It's coming. I mean, if your replica can be as good as you, it starts to question what does it mean to be human.
What
and-
if your replica votes against your replica in a DAO vote?
I'd say it's also a spectrum, right? So there's ways in which it could definitely represent you and your interests, and like let's say like I always buy the same toothpaste, and I want this agent to go and order me the toothpaste. You know, like that's like definitely like it can definitely do that, and then all the way to probably the hardest problems, which are like probably love or or maybe even emulating exactly how you would think about a response, like replying in the exact same way you would reply. That's probably at the other end of the spectrum. And so probably what's going to happen over time is incrementally the abilities of the agents will improve and the gap will narrow.
Yeah, one point also, I think like we over-indexed on use cases that are very like anthropomorphic. Like there's a set of agentic use cases where you have like agent-to-agent interactions that are totally unlike what we could imagine, like hyperparameter count, like like in high dimensional vector space, like these things trading objects you can't even like make sense of. That could be like bundles of goods and so on. Like economists have been like dreaming about this, and in theory you can do it. No human would ever like make sense of this bundle, but agents can potentially do it. And then they can come up with like generative new stuff. Like they can generate new worlds. I mean, this is a whole other discussion where you can have like entire like virtual worlds created, which these agents have like some sort of value in, right? Like when we're talking about the value of some currency or some crypto coin, right? Like it's a mimetic thing, all the way to the US dollar, right? Like okay, there's different layers of like sort of state being able to tax and so on, but there's always this mimetic aspect. And like with the agents, I mean, they'll create things we don't even see, right? And use them to trade with each other.
It's going to be an exciting next few years as that starts to play out. Thanks, everybody. We're out of time. Thanks to our panelists.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.